Okay, so before we get into the conversation, I'd like to go to each person and have them get an opportunity to give more context as to what they do. It's always better to hear it from the horse's mouth, so I'm told. So we'll start with you on my left, Tokoloho.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tokoloho. I'm the co-founder of We Are One Music. We are an experiential music agency. So what that means is we connect people through music. We do that by bridging a gap between the emerging artists as well as the established artists. What we see is in this country, there's a lot of established artists and a lot of artists that come in, but there's nobody that facilitates for the missing middle. So we facilitate for that to ensure that we produce. Our country keeps producing acts like this, don't go unnoticed. These gems are constantly seen by our people and by the world. So that's what we do. We give people music.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And Amahle?
Hi again. My name is Amahle. I am the founder and director of House of Amahle. And House of Amahle is basically a creative agency and production house where we collaborate with a lot of corporate, private, and personal entities just to give them creative content, but also content that tells a story. I believe very much in story, so what my business does is that I collaborate with brands to sort of market and sort of create online and offline material and visual content while doing so in telling their story and giving them a personal edge. Yeah.
So my name is Wandile King Liu. So I co-own a streetwear brand called I Run Jozi, which is what I'm wearing. So what we essentially do is fuse different traditional cultures into urban streetwear. Because our thing was, how about we make our cultures cool on a street level more than having people from outside that come in and see that, wow, these patterns are cool, where do we wear them? And you only wear them to like weddings and that kind of stuff. So we thought, how can we make a streetwear brand that's gonna be relevant to the youth that also embodies culture? So that's what we do, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with this, but JNB as a space lives by a handful of mantras. I want to go through those mantras and really ask you guys questions about how the business program has helped you guys live up to those vision statements, if you will. There's give and get given, which speaks to collaboration. Can one of you just share how collaboration has strengthened your business?
Okay, so speaking about collaborations, we have an event coming up next weekend. So with that event, it's a fashion show that also has like a picnic side to it. So we've collaborated with one of the people that are here at JNB Hive, which is the guys at Old School Coffee, taps right there. So yeah, we also have like another collaboration that we currently in talks with one of the members of the JNB Hive. So what that does is that you also get to share ideas amongst other creative people that you don't actually get to have when you're just running your business on your own, you know. So collaborating and being in a space where we can share and bounce ideas of each other is very like helpful to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just over to you, Tokoloho, like in terms of running because you guys, we spoke before the talk about your We Are One Music Festival, and it's a beast. Festivals are beasts to organize. When it comes to the production of that, how have you been able to tap into the spirit of collaboration?
I think, prior to coming into the JNB Hive, trying to pull off the festival with the very small team that we had and the limited resources, we understood like how much it actually takes. Like it takes a lot, like you said, to put on a festival. Coming into the JNB Hive, what collaboration has afforded us to do is do more with the things that we have and as well as getting the equipment that the JNB Hive provides. JNB Hive helps us with like some form of production equipment and, people who have that production expertise to help us put on our festivals better.
Yeah, and I guess there's also a second mantra of JNB Hive is never stop learning, which is about learning from the network and the resources around you. Have you, particularly from Amahle, had any surprise learnings as a result of being part of the business program?
Definitely. Intel that there's so much that I thought I knew, or that I thought I was like, yeah, I'm an expert, come on, nobody can tell me about this. And one key thing that has stuck out for me is that there's a difference between being a creative and being a business person. But they do work hand in hand with each other. So as much as I'm well adversed in terms of my creative side, I had to learn how to manage a business.
Yes.
Being on time, working ethically, being able to collaborate with fellow members, and how to collaborate with fellow members. I think another important thing is that when you're collaborating, there's a sense of give and take that's there in terms of learning from the other person and also allowing to teach the other person, and that relationship is one thing that I really stuck out for me. Yeah.
Okay, Wandile, for you, what would you say were the most valuable lessons in your time at JNB Hive so far?
Okay, amongst the most valuable lessons that I think I've learned is the fact that you can do so much more with what you have, you know. And whenever you do business, it's whatever problems that you encounter, they don't necessarily entail like financial muscle for you to improve your business. So you can just do more with whatever you have. Just try and look at it from a different perspective, and the fact that money is not always the answer, you know.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying, because I often come across a lot of entrepreneurs who say they can't get this particular thing off the ground because they don't have the financing or they don't have a sponsor. And really part of being an entrepreneur is being innovative in your means. It's looking at the community around you, the organizations and platforms that have actually been built in order to enable and support you. But beyond that, there's also the job of, I would say, getting it out there. Now, we all need to use different avenues to make sure that our businesses reach our intended consumers. You know, there's a little quote around Instagram, you know, if it's not on the gram, it never happened, basically. And to an extent, you can borrow that insight and apply it to business. You can create an amazing product, but without a sales strategy, without knowing where you're gonna, you know, place your product, you might as well have not created at all. Can you guys take us through some of these strategies and some of the key insights that you've adopted as a result?
You know,
I like it when I ask a question, someone's like, yeah. Yeah.
it's a very loaded
That's
question.
a good question.
When we started doing events and when we started putting on festivals, we thought, you know what? If you build something, people will come. It's evident that the type of events that we're going into, the type of festivals that we're trying to curate don't exist in the space. And we're under the impression that, you know what? If you just do something that's not there, the people who resonate with that thing will come. And
It's not
that
enough.
was that was like our biggest mistake, because, you know, as opposed to building dead in the center, we're like, you know what, this thing isn't in the center, so we're gonna go on the side and we're gonna build on the side. But we don't have the resources that the center has. We don't have the people that are there in the center. And, you know, being in the JNB Hive actually reminds you, okay, yes, it starts with the problem, understanding what the problem is, but the problem is always related to the people that problem affects, because they're the ones who are going to, you know, pay or going to interact with your solution. So it's bringing us back into ourselves, going back to the middle where the people are, and building right there in the center where people are going to see it. Don't just think because something is not there, the moment you put it out there, people will gravitate towards it. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
how do I communicate this thing with the people that it's for?
So that's great. Let's brush aside the theoreticals. For you, as terms of like movement experience, We Are One Music Festival, what have you learned and feel like you need to employ to make your festival even more successful? What are the breadcrumbs that you're going to be laying out to make sure that people actually attend that festival?
Doing build-up shows. So a festival is an annual event, and that's not enough. So what we've after doing our first festival, what we saw is, okay, we want this momentum, but in order to have this momentum and in order to grow the space and the way that we see this growth look like, we need to constantly interact with the people that this thing is for. So it's doing a lot of build-up shows. Every month we have a show that we host, building up to the festival next year, just to build the momentum, to constantly interact with the audience that we're trying to capture, to have a better understanding of actually who is this thing that we're building actually for, who interacts with this thing the way we want them to interact with it. And for us right now, practically it looks like doing a lot of build-up shows, and that's what
Yeah.
we've started doing this year. And just branching into online content. We see that in South Africa, what's happening is these emerging artists that we're talking about, you go online, you don't really find a lot. You won't find videos, you don't find a lot of content of these artists online. And as part of our offering, just building other things around our festival that's just not the festival. Smaller events, artist-centered content, and constant things like that.
I love that as a response. So in the lead up to the We Are One Music Festival, you have a whole events plan with smaller events that help you build community and loyalty. In parallel to that, you're going to run a content strategy where you're building content, helping your community know more about the artist at hand. So how does that kind of thinking apply for you in fashion?
Okay, so for my brand, for instance, if I can make an example with my brand, so it was initially targeted the youth, you know. So this being obviously like your students and maybe young people that go to school. So then after having done a lot of research by having like a shop where we're available from, and then you get to interact with the market. This is when now we started learning that we actually have a whole lot more interest from the overseas audience than we do with the locals, you know. So we then sat down and thought, how do we then find a strategy where we can communicate better with that kind of audience, because we weren't communicating with it at all.
Yeah.
So now this is when we sat back and thought, okay, we have this audience that's interested in our product. How do we then speak to it? So we've had a few discussions with the guys that are obviously here at JNP Hive as to how they can assist us with that. So we have strategies of how we can communicate with them via the digital platforms, obviously being social media as well. How do we then tailor make our strategies to those people, you know, because with platforms like Instagram and Facebook, you can actually direct a certain message to a certain audience, you know, by virtue of demographics and all of that. So we've seen who we need to speak to, and now we have strategies as how we can make it happen.
But I mean, one of your strategies has been to dress and seed popular, you know, individuals like Speedster and a couple internationals, if I'm not mistaken. So that's another way. I think particularly fashion entrepreneurs have managed to get their brands out there.
Yeah.
And Amahle, I think for you, because the one thing you guys have in common is that you're trying to reach a community. I would say that your client tends to be a little bit more corporate, if you will, or more brand specific. How do brands get to find out about your services and your offerings?
So, I mean, one big one is social media. I use social media almost every day on a daily basis.
When you say you use social media, what are you doing on social media?
Research purposes. And when I say research, researching my audience and then researching my target market and researching people that I can offer my services to in terms of content. I mean, we're living in an era where social media now is taking over almost everyone's life. So everyone is constantly looking for a new way to market themselves or a new way to kind of brand themselves, and that's where I kind of like put myself out there as sort of like a content producer and a content creator for these people. And I mean, this is a recent discovery actually. I mostly the way I used to market myself was mostly a hand-to-mouth thing. So it's like a face-to-face type of connection and interaction, where I would meet someone and sort of like understand where they're coming from as an artist, and even as a business, and as a client, and then kind of like then direct their content in a more creative manner. Yeah.
And then just on the back of that, one of the other mantras is get social. And I know that we all get caught up in social media, and I think social media can only get you so far. I think it's been a huge learning curve for me in my business that, you know, PR, and I mean, when I say PR, I mean legitimate PR is invaluable. You want to get your events in the paper, you want to get your events on radio, you want to get your clothes featured in editorials, you want to get your reels also like just just you want to get interviewed, you want to be featured on Biz Communities, Screen Africa, and so on and so forth. So I think as much as we'll all get caught up in social, it's also quite important to extend beyond that. And I'd like to know, have you ever considered the type of platforms you exist on? So I think you're all on Instagram. Are you all on LinkedIn?
Well,
Looking at me oddly. Because it's a thing to understand, because each platform serves a different reason and it reaches a different person. To isolate your market or your intentions to Instagram only attracts a certain demographic. If you want to reach more corporates, as a learning, corporates tend to I suppose, communicate more on Twitter as opposed to Instagram. Instagram has become the home of the creative community. So you have to actually understand your audience to be like, is Instagram really the platform for my business? Or is it LinkedIn? Or is it Facebook? Or is it et cetera, et cetera? And I really enjoy the fact that part of the thinking of J&B Hive is getting people to understand what they mean when they say get social. So just some things for you to think about. And then I really also wanted to find out, just in terms of be profit orientated. Entrepreneurs oddly do not like to talk about money. Like, entrepreneurs do not like to talk about whether they are making money. And this is something that as a community we need to, overcome. It's not about saying this is like my bank balance, but in order to create sustainable, and commercially viable businesses, we need to be profit orientated. I'd like to know, as far as the business programming has helped you, how are you better equipped to handle your financial responsibilities?
Well, yeah, I'd like to think so now, because we've had a couple of classes with like your financial experts, where we've learned how to use money, how to look at your funds like in a more transparent manner than just saying, okay, we made 50 sales and it doesn't really amount to how much came in as opposed to the expenses and all of that. So I think we're a lot better at handling our money now, and like when we do get money, how are we going to use it now? So we're in a better space than we were when we came, before we came here. So yeah.
Would you say the same thing, Amahle?
I mean, I'd like to think so. I'd like to believe so. And I mean, I say that because I used to do this thing of every time I'm faced with a client or get a client, of course, we're talking money, we're talking prices. And then clients will always try and undercharge you, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes, there's that vice versa, that back and forth between this pricing, and sometimes I'll end up undercharging myself or underpricing my services. And I had to get to a point where, once I've joined the Hive and once I'd completed these workshops, I learned that sometimes you have to stick to your guns. You have to stick to the rules you've set and the pricings you've set in order for you to kind of become profitable. But also at the same time, there's also understanding that sometimes your payment does not come. Sometimes payment is not monetary, as much as it is. Sometimes it's creating that relationship with your client in order to get the big bucks. Or sort of like create in order to get other clients or other means of income. And that's one thing that the J&B Hive has kind of like taught me to really learn, to be like, every opportunity is an opportunity to become profitable in some way. Sometimes it's not always money. So yeah.
True. You want to say something?
Yeah, with us coming into the J&B Hive, financial management wasn't the problem. We knew how to run our budgets. If there was a budget for event, we know how to stick to it. Our biggest challenge was finding a sustainable business model that's going to get us into this future that we see, or that's going to make us see the kind of change that we want to see through. So right now, sitting with Bernard and Nogwazi and Arthur and the whole Hive team, just learning how to find that business model and just being adaptive, learning how to kind of change things and see which other pockets we can find to to make different revenue streams or to just adjust. And yeah, ours is learning how to find a sustainable business model, and we're getting a lot of help in terms of that from the JNB Hive.
Okay, fantastic. And then in terms of seeking opportunities and growing your businesses, what kind of things have you learned from the business program around that?
Can I go last? I need to think about it.
Wandile.
Okay. One thing that we have as members of the JNP is the fact that whenever you have, say, like an opportunity from wherever you have it, like outside in the streets, wherever, or in the corporates, you can always come back and speak to the guys here, as to how they can help you entertain the opportunity that you've just gotten, So with us, we've gotten a few opportunities of being shelved at like your reputable retail outlets. So we obviously in talks with the guys to help us with that, So whenever we have an opportunity, we know where to run to, and that's the Hive, So it does help us with that.
Okay, Amahle.
Sorry, can you just repeat your question?
Just in terms of like seeking opportunities and growing your business, what lessons have you learned from the program around assisting you grow, like tangibly grow your business?
I would say putting myself out there. And when I say put myself out there, is sort of like tapping into those opportunities that you think are not for you, or the opportunities that you think are too big to fill. This shoe is too big for me. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I've learned. And I mean, I always say to myself, oh, I'm such an artist. No, I create certain aspects. I know I want something creative. I want to do something creative. And one thing that I've learned at the JNPF is that sometimes, to run a business, there's certain things that you need to kind of sacrifice in terms of knowing when business is business, and then knowing how to kind of be creative within your business, and knowing how to find other avenues and other streams of obtaining that income, of obtaining that business. So that's one major thing that I learned in my own business.
Okay. Are you ready?
There's no one answer, because every situation is different.
Yeah.
Your situation. Speak to your.
I'm talking now personally. Every situation is different. The one answer is mentorship. The JNB Hive helps a lot with mentorship. Sometimes when certain opportunities come, or something that might look like an opportunity to you now, but you're just not ready for it at the time. You need people that have traveled that road before, people with business maturity to just sit down and digest and just break this thing apart. So there's no one answer. I think it's more mentorship. They help you a lot with just breaking that thing down and seeing everything as opposed to just that one thing that you were so focused on.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. And then I think for me, what comes with growth often comes to dealing with a lot more people. How big or small are your guys' teams, and what have you learned about having to deal and manage people? We're going to start with you because you chuckled.
Ooh, teams.
Are any members of his team here? I suppose it's a safe space then.
No. I'm still learning how to build a team.
Yeah.
I'm also,
Because people are hard.
Yes, and because you're also hard, you're a person too. There's some things that I also need to learn in order to better have the kind of team that you want around you. You've had good people, and our challenge has always been, okay, you have good people. How do you ensure that you retain these good people? Understanding that, you're a startup. There's competition from people that can pay them more, pay them what they're actually worth, and you also understand that. Ours is still a learning. How do we learn to have the people that we want around, and how do you get yourself ready to, how do you know? I'm learning. My answer is I'm learning how to build a team. We have great people on our team, and we've lost great people also.
Yeah.
We've had people that weren't so great, but that's also a reflection on you. So it's learning how to build a team better. That's the state in which we're at right now.
Okay.
Okay, so with my team, I have a relatively small team. So there's about 3 of us. So having said that, the 3 of us know what each is their responsibility and not, So right now we feel like we do need more hands but we just not at a profit level where we feel like we can sort of source those services on a full-time basis.
Okay.
Yes, we do right now on a part-time basis, but yeah, I'm working in a great team, but I wish I could have more hands, and we're working on getting that.
Okay.
So I'm in a team of 3, myself included.
But
And,
surely you scale up because you're in production.
Yes, so I was about to say that, like, I mean, I'm in a team of mainly 3 people who I work with mostly. And depending on the scale of the project, I do tend to outsource a lot of my partners and sort of like a team itself. And I think my biggest lesson is learning how to manage how to manage and also how to work with people.
Okay.
Especially when you're coming from a leadership perspective. There's a certain way you speak to people, there's a certain way you delegate, there's a certain way you lead, but also learning to follow. You're not going to know everything, as much as you want to. So it's also learning to say, you know what, that area is yours. Please do right by that area, and knowing where your place is in that team. I look at a team as like a tree, and then you're kind of like the main stem, and you have all these branches who kind of help you to stand, as much as you're the main kind of stem. So yeah, that's the main thing that I've learned is learning to work with people.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you guys, in closing, if you guys had to distill just one thing that was incredibly invaluable in terms of your business journey with the JNB Hive, and that you would recommend use as a selling point to another person, what would that one thing be?
So I feel like the most invaluable thing is just learning about all the functions of business, which is what we barely speak about or even entertain when as young like business people. So here we got a chance to learn about all the functions of business, so you got to understand your business a lot better. I might just think, as a young businessman, I might just think that my job is only to just make the garments and just sell them, but there's so many other functions that I need to look at within the business. So I thought it was the most invaluable thing for you to learn about your business, to understand it a lot better. We had all those classes, even down to the financial management, so that was invaluable for me.
The one thing that I would say is learn to adapt. I think, we all know that the world changes every day, but I also think as the world changes, you kind of also have to change as a business owner, and learning how your business changes and learning to adapt in order for your business to improve itself. So, and that's like an everyday thing. As you said, you need to always learn. Never stop learning. As much as you might think you know something or you're good at something, you can always learn something else. And then the other thing is learning to adapt in your respective business.
Okay.
You might not see an opportunity because you're thinking a certain way, but if you kind of like are more open-minded to other ideas and critique, then it's easier for you to even see other avenues of growing in your business.
Wow, mine would have nothing to do with business, actually. Yes, there's business development, there's the brand development, but the biggest takeaway from the JNB Hive is the sense of community. Entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey at times, and you come into the space, you see other people, who are on the same journey as you. You might not be going the same direction, but our stories are always so interrelated, and just the sense of community, knowing that there's a space for other entrepreneurs who are also on their journeys at different parts in their journeys. There's so much to learn from and to share with one another. The biggest takeaway for me is the sense of community.
Guys, thank you so much for sharing.